Well, welcome to the Burnout Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Nugent. You know, one of the things that I love the most about this podcast is sharing people's stories, not only my own, but the stories of amazing men and women and the things that they've gone through. You know, life can be challenging, life can be hard, life can be devastating at moments. And there's this belief out there that, you know, when we go through heartache or financial loss or devastation, whatever it happens to be, that all of a sudden becomes part of our identity. And I'm a big believer that no matter what's happened in your life, you can still have it all. No matter how much destruction, no matter how much pain, you know, it's a choice. And I truly believe that the challenges and the hardships that we're faced with are actually gifts. And we're given opportunities by the universe from God to be able to, you know, to choose what we do with what our experiences. And I am honored today to have a man that I've known, in fact, his entire life. His name is AJ Whipple. AJ is actually my cousin. And AJ has a fascinating story. Was making a ton of money, crushing it, you know, in the supplement space, started to get into, you know, to steroids and selling all sorts of things and ended up getting caught, ended up going to prison for nearly a year and a half and has come out on the other side, you know, and his life's thriving and he's got a lot of amazing things. And for those women that are listening, this man is single. So I'm just going to plug you there, brother. But we're going to dig into this. AJ, it's an honor to have you here. And I just appreciate you being, you know, so open and willing to share this story because, you know, I've heard things through the families and all the things, and then you and I went to lunch here a few weeks ago and like just kind of dug into it. I'm like, oh, I've got to have you on the podcast. So thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, you bet. Mm-hmm.
So you're 37 years old today. Mm-hmm. You know, we were just talking prior to starting this that you know, were in prison for nearly 18 months and had been out nearly 10 years, right? So let's go back. What were you doing? What was your life before you got in trouble, before all these things? Like, what was AJ's life like at that time? What were you doing?
I just got into Dixie State or Utah Tech football, playing there. And I all throughout school, I've been in athletics. Football is the biggest one, lifting, all that. And yeah, it's just trying to make my way in, like loving football and then going to school there. Trying to find my way, basically, of what I wanted to do in my life, in a sense. And yeah, I mean, if anyone knew me from high school and stuff, that's about me, where I was all athletics, lifting, trying to do, all that.
And today involved still in CrossFit. Yep. I mean, very healthy. I mean, that's been a big thing. I remember you way back in the day. I mean, you know, we go to family parties and like, you're just this like, whoa, what happened to AJ? You know, shredded, just built and just big and like, yeah. So you're at Dixie, so which is a university in Southern Utah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how did when did you go to Florida? How did that end?
So I've been there for about 3 years, and just playing, and I had gone with a friend, met a friend from Florida, and I was tired of playing the politics. You would say, football, going back and forth and stuff. And so it was either, you know, I wanted a change. I was tired of it. And I had friends that were in Florida and then in California. I'd never been to Florida. And I went out there for a wedding, a friend's wedding. And I was like, oh, why not? So all of a sudden, it just like, spur of the moment. It was fast all of a sudden, and just something changed in different world. That's pretty much how I got into Florida. I mean,
how old were you at the time?
I turned 22.
22.
I remember that. Yeah.
Okay, so you went to a wedding. Did you end up staying in Florida, or did you come back and then
just to move stuff?
Yeah,
that's about it. But literally, I like during that wedding and going through all that. I'm like talking to my friend. I'm like, hey, you know, I'd already been in the steroid game, basically. And
say that again. You're already in the steroid game?
Yeah. So I picked that up from a friend while at college, starting to use them. And then basically how it came about of me actually, you know, making them and then selling them was our contact basically said, hey, I'm going to take a break. Or I'm going to stop. It's too much heat or whatnot. And we're like, and all it was is I was like, my friend say, hey, give an opportunity is like, well, based off these forms, you can actually make the compounds and stuff like this, given the instructions, if you have the compounds, the right elements. And I'm like, all right, I'll look into it. there's some money in there if it's investable. I'm like, all right, I don't have much going else on. So I was like,
So this is when you were in Florida that like you were
well,
presenting
at first it was in Utah.
You were in Utah.
Yeah, it was first Utah. Yeah, it was like second year into football.
Do they check for steroids in college football?
They typically do, but they didn't really.
You weren't worried about like doing a blood or urine test or whatever they do, and like
No, I mean, there's all different steroids for that too. I mean, I got so far into it where they're
you could even in your system you could find things to take that wouldn't get picked up.
take stuff to take bypass that depending on how bad the test is. And we were such a small school that I was like, the chances are it's not going to happen. While I was there, it never did happen. I did hear like after we left, a bunch of people did get, but that wasn't that high of a thing to me. So.
Yeah, you weren't worried about it.
No, yeah, and so that's why I started doing it. I'm like, oh, okay, but it was in my mind of getting caught for that, but it was like, whatever.
So I'm currently training for a fitness show, and there's a lot of people in the space. Steroids are rampant today, right? Mm-hmm. And you have coaches out there pushing. I mean, you get on TikTok. I mean, most of my TikTok, is like fitness stuff, and it's like, do this steroid, do this. Here's the side effects in doing this. And so what note? I'm just curious, like on the steroid side standpoint, what did it feel like? I mean, pre-steroids and all of a sudden taking steroids, right? I mean, all of a sudden you saw massive changes in your body relatively quickly.
Oh yeah. I mean, my training was still the same, but you'd have fast gains, and you can go longer. I was luckily young enough that it didn't have that big of effect. I mean, there's small things you really have to educate yourself about, but yeah, it was massive gains, massive strength gains, everything, you name it. And then comes with that a lot of side effects, but if you educate yourself enough, you know what to do. So,
yeah. Okay. So you're, and how long at this point how long had you been on steroids before you actually started to manufacture your own?
Not even that long, probably 6 months.
Okay.
I probably did like 1 to 2 cycles. When I say cycles, it's like 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
And
is steroids usually a cycle? You do it for a certain period, take a break.
Typically, because just to give your body enough, because anytime you take a foreign object that shuts off your regular system, testosterone level, especially men, you need to have it come back. Or there are some if you don't come off, you take the chance of it never coming back on. Okay. So your natural test will dead, and that's where a lot of people have major issues, is because they stayed on for so long because it's so good. Well, I don't want to come off of it, and I'm like, well, you're going to screw yourself over in the long run.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, again, I would be lying if I didn't say I was kind of curious of it, just seeing the game. But at the same time, like, I don't want to get accustomed to a certain frame or like, and realizing that in getting, this is what it's like to be, and all of a sudden, it's not maintainable if you're not on that. And then all of a sudden you have all these, I've worked enough through my own weight loss transformation of having body image issues and so forth. And I mean, again, you have so many people pushing and talking about it, but you have so many people that were in it for years that are like, it's not worth it. Like, don't go there.
Yeah, it does change your system completely. Deep level. Once you try it, your endocrine system changes completely. It's never the same. So there are still some long lasting effects. I would caution strongly not to do it. And if you do, educate yourself really well so it's not super lasting, certain of those effects.
So you're in Southern Utah at school. Mm-hmm. You started, you've been on about 6 months. You started manufacturing at that point.
Yeah.
How were you selling here even locally?
Yeah, it started out locally, really. And then it started doing we got on forums. There's all these bodybuilding forums, left and right, where, they just want to say, hey, how do training wise, bodybuilding.com has their own forums. Any of these things that have offshoot forums. And so you start hooking them up where it's like, okay, oh yeah, I'll send you a wire, like a Western Union or MoneyGram. Okay. And then back and forth. That's how it kind of started. And then it blew up where we started using, the forums went rampant where, we had our own systems where encrypted emailing. And so you send an email to that, hey, what's your list of steroids? What's the pricing and such? They get it and send back, basically an order. Okay, cool. And then we send them the wired information. with the address, pay it, we pick it up, and then ship it. All wherever you want it, basically.
So you built this business, if you will, right? This side hustle, which really wasn't a side hustle, but like
Yeah, it started that way, and then it just like branched
so
into...
again,
Yeah.
not legal, doing this whole thing behind the scenes, no harm, no foul. You're 22 at the time, right? It's like, make some extra money. Everybody's doing it, right? It's just rationalizing it. Did you have any, at that time even starting it, did you have any concerns? Were you like, oh, what happens if I get caught? Like, is this worth it? Like, were you having those conversations with yourself?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. And yeah, the whole thing. And I'm like, it's irrationalized. Or it's like, oh, everyone's using it. It's not that big of a deal. It's, whatever. It is illegal, but it'd be like a slap on the wrist, if anything. And then that was how I got into it. I'm like, it was always a means to an end. That's how I always made it.
I'm going to do this for a minute.
Yeah.
And then so it was like...
To transfer into something bigger, take that and then put it into something really, legal in a sense.
Yeah.
So, and then it just spiraled into all of a sudden you're living this such a high life and it's hard to stop that, basically.
Yeah. I mean, so you're early 20s, making a ton of money, living the life of the singular bachelor.
Yeah.
Obviously life's very different from Southern Utah to, where in Florida were you?
Just north of Miami.
You're in Miami,
yeah.
right?
So I'm in all that. Yeah. Clubs were open at 6 till 6 a.m. It's party life.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to South Florida, that's all. It's party central.
And so obviously you're working out, you're still doing the things, and it's just, you're just living just almost like a damn Blazarian life, right?
Yeah,
Smaller level, obviously.
Yeah.
But like the go-to, and then again, it just kept growing and growing and growing and growing, right?
Yeah.
So for how many years were you doing this?
Until I got, so I started in about 22, and then 26 is when I got caught, when I got arrested.
So that 4 years, did your family know what you were doing?
At first, no, not really. And then I didn't really tell them the whole details. And then a couple of them I finally did. I'm like, all right, yes, I do this.
What did they think you were doing?
I all I said was like, I do drop
shipping.
Drop shipping, international trade.
You know what? So memory flashback came back because I remember this obviously years ago, right? 15 plus years ago. And I'm like, you came up at a conversation, an extended family thing, and it's like, what's age you doing? Oh, he's doing drop shipping. That just literally, that memory just kicked in. Yeah, he's doing really well. He's doing drop shipping, international stuff. And so
that's, in a way it is. And so there is a truth in that. So,
I mean,
but not the full details.
No one else was like, well, what's he drop shipping?
Yeah,
what's he
exactly.
doing, right?
Yeah.
So were you selling internationally with this stuff?
A few, but not as much. It's not as big, but yeah.
All over the country.
All over the country, you name it, anywhere. And everywhere.
At the peak, how many people were you saying you were selling to? Hundreds?
Oh, easily.
Thousands?
Thousands, yeah. In a month, thousands, easily. Because I was basically, you call them underground, your underground guy. I was selling to them, and then they would sell to them. So they were bigger bulk people. I'd have small and pop people, like one or two things. But most of them were big orders because I can undercut everyone. And
where were you making this? Like at your house?
At first, it was at my house, and then I got into where it's a warehouse, and where it's basically a full clean room, and basically.
Did you have people making it for you?
No. I try to keep my circle really small, because as it grows, it's just for protection. And I live that life too, where I wouldn't let people in really close to know my whole self, and I still have issues because of that. But yeah, because I was afraid to either get caught or know the whole story, know I'm a fake, this, etc.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've had my own thing with this. Like we wear masks, right? And so I'm a recovering people pleaser and. I've said this before. I used to act. It's fascinating even to say this out loud. The irony in it. But I used to almost brag about I'd be a chameleon almost, like finding pleasure in showing up different for this person and that person and that person. And again, the root of that was the fear of what they're going to think about me, right? Not wanting conflict, And it's interesting how so many people, I think the default's to wear a mask. Right, is to just show a certain part of it. And I have this whole thing today. It's I just want to be unapologetically my authentic self. And it's okay if you don't like me, right? And it's okay if we don't connect. And I believe the right people will be in my life just based on me being who I am. And what I've learned by, again, is, and I get why even today, maybe that's hard to let people in.
Yeah.
Because there's a fear of rejection. There's a fear they're not going to see me, or a fear of being accepted. And that's common. And I've just found like the freedom of just being me, authentically me, whether I'm on a podcast, whether I'm with my kids, with whoever I'm with, I'm just the same,
Yeah.
and it's just like, there's this weight that I don't have to pretend to be anybody. And with what comes with that also is rejection, is that people don't like you, is all these feelings, right? And you've got to learn to accept it. It's just the way it is. And what, something to think about for you and for all of us that are listening is, when we're worried, we get into this state like, we want people to like us, we want people to see us. What I always come back to, if I find myself in that headspace, is, well, I don't like everybody. There's people I don't want to be around. So of course, who am I to think that everybody's got to like me, when the truth is I don't like everybody either. It's just fascinating, the stories we tell ourselves as we get into that. Yeah. And so, but yeah, there's a lot of freedom in just being us. And I also see, right, you've got this illegal business, doing things behind the scenes. And so of course you want to protect it, because if you just were open about it, so I can only imagine during that time, I mean, you're blowing this thing up, you're living this lifestyle, right? The lifestyle's driving it, but in many ways you're living a lie.
Oh yeah.
Right. Were you constantly having battles in your head about this?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was a full-blown alcoholic due to that reason. I knew what I was doing was so wrong, but I couldn't find a way to stop it because of that lifestyle. I mean, my routine would go almost every day, if not every other day, to the casino, gamble to try to justify or filter the money in a sense. And then from there, I'd go to the clubs, strip clubs, all that. And I'd get attention from there. And so all that, full-blown alcoholic, and then also was taking Coke to offset the amount of drinking.
Well, yeah, because then that keeps you going, right?
And so,
I mean, cocaine's rampant, especially the party world, because it's like it gives you the ability to keep going more and drinking more and more and more, right? I mean, it's like it keeps the party going.
Yeah, and so literally, I would, live in the moment, and that's really what it was. Is never, no regard for the future. Is live in the moment, live it up, and then hopefully something will come down the road. That's what it got to, and lo and behold, yeah, it was, and I was arrested.
Yeah. So obviously, and I want to bring this point out too, because I think, I would say this, I believe everybody in one form or the other has an addiction, right? Addiction, there's lots of different clinical definitions of it, of what it is. For me, addiction is rooted in avoidance. It's rooted in not wanting to feel something. And more importantly, it's rooted in not wanting to face a part of ourselves, right? So again, what you're doing is wrong, but it's like, but the thought of losing it all and all these different things. And so instead of like facing it or taking radical accountability, it's like, I'm just going to numb out and not feel. And the irony in that is we go to substances or behaviors to not feel, but all we're doing, and there's this temporary relief, but really what happens is it keeps us in this cycle. You can't outrun it, right? And it'll catch up with us at some point, and then it just becomes a state of being. And then now, instead of like, having hard conversations or facing the truth or doing stuff, now we have our brain and our body addicted to this dopamine from, Coke, alcohol, drug, whatever. And then the withdrawals that come off of that, it becomes suffocating.
Yeah.
When I went through losing my investment business, I wanted to it was so painful. It was too uncomfortable to face the pain. And I was checking out and numbing out whatever I could possibly find just to not feel, and all I did was create way more suffering, way more pain than it needed to be, because I wasn't willing to face the truth or face myself. And, and again, it's not to say that all drinking's bad or all these things are bad, but it's like things in moderation, but anything can become excessive. Yeah. And that excessiveness, usually, if any of us find ourselves in that, is a signal to say there's something else out of sync. There's something we're avoiding. There's something we're not facing, so I appreciate you being open about that. So how did you get caught?
Basically, one of my customers acted on, got in trouble out in California, and I guess he was like an ex-sheriff or something. He tipped them off Orange County, and then Orange County, I think sheriffs tipped them off saying, "Hey, I have this thing? Would you be interested, to help me out? And then they rolled into DEA, and they looked at me and they're like, and then they acted on their behalf, and they placed orders, watched me, every single thing, built a case before they even arrested me, and before I knew it was all of a sudden.
So how'd you find out? I mean, did they come busting in, or
So I was in a gated. I lived in a gated community, and my warehouse was just around the corner. My regular routine was I was actually up a little. It was a little out of routine. I had a lot of extra orders from the previous day, and I got them all ready. And I had worked super early, all the way till like 10 a.m. I got all this. I look like, they call it, even the DEA agents, like, you look like Santa, because I have all these packages, big packages with me. Throw it in my car, and I go back to my house just to walk my dog, and before I went off, and then I go and work out after I ship them out. Got in, walked my dog, put them back in, and I was literally hurrying because I wanted to try to get to the gym and to the post office. And the first thing I heard was like, put the car in, and someone was blocking me. And I was like, what in the heck? Yeah. And I'm like, I thought some stupid idiot was just blocking me. I'm like, and then all of a sudden, you see all DE agents, guns drawn. But I'm like, oh, it hit me. There it was. I knew it was. I'm like, okay, here it is. You think about these things because you're going through all these illegal things. It's like, here it is. That's a pivotal moment I remember because my life was never going to be the same. I knew that. From that moment on, I went on a completely different trajectory.
So you're there in your car, whatever, guns drawn, and you're just like, I'm done.
Yep. I'm like, it was like a relief because, like I said, I couldn't really stop myself from doing what I was doing. And here we are. That finally, it's finally come to an end after all these years.
So you literally, in that moment, there was even an element of relief. I mean,
yes.
Obviously, I'm sure a ton of fear.
Oh yeah, it was like through the whole thing. They like put it in a park, throw the keys outside, hands out. So they didn't know if I was armed or anything, but and then put me in handcuffs on the ground, and then they went into my house and stuff. But yeah, it was a rush of relief because I'm like, you build this up in your head, like, what if this could happen? How is it going to play out? And it finally does. And you're like, damn, okay.
So you get arrested, go to local jail.
Yeah, right? Mine was federal, so it was the detention center down in Miami. They call it Miami DTC, Detention Center, where it's everyone goes there. So. And
you were there, is that where you were there for the full?
No, that was a
temporary thing. Pending trial.
Pending.
Did you get released on bail? Did you get?
Yeah, I got released after I think it was about 10 days. 10 days I was in there while they work out the bail and bond basically, and yeah.
How did your family find out about it?
I actually called so I had told my dad, and my parents knew, and I think my brother is one of my brothers. I was the only ones I've ever told in my family. And I told my dad, there are some eerily weird things leading up to that I felt something going on. And so hey, if something happens, if you get a call from me, do this. And that's what I did. I called him up. I'm like, hey, I'm arrested. You need to get a lawyer, and I'll do all the things that we already said. It's like, okay. Immediately, he went and got,
got the attorneys, got everything.
Flew out. He was there the whole time. Huge. I mean, it's awesome relief to to have someone on your side like that. Yeah, I had called my girlfriend too at that moment, and she had known what I did, and so they were both there, helping getting the stuff in the back for me to try to get out. So
how long were you in? And before we started, you said you ended up pleading out. But how long were those, like, we'll call it court proceedings? You're working through that. How long were you out on bail? I mean,
8 months. I was out on long. For me, I thought it was. I've never been in the court system, so I was like, that's really typical. It could even be a lot longer than 8 months. But from when I got out, and then they decided, okay, we'll go through these. You have to go all these things of discovery of, etc. Meet with the prosecutors, etc. If you wanted, they wanted to know some things and seeing if I could help them out to try to reduce my sentence, etc. And then they finally decided, okay, here's your sentencing date. And that was April of the next year.
So what was life during those 8 months? Like the
That's probably the
uncertainty.
worst.
That was the hardest part.
That was the hardest part, even more than serving the time, because you can't plan for the future. My point structure was, or what they came out with was 36 to 48 months. And so I'm like, okay, well, okay. I don't even know what to plan for. You can't plan for the future. So you're living in limbo. That's it.
Did they like freeze your bank accounts, like everything?
Yeah,
like,
so they pretty much everything, and they put on like part of the things on my bond where I can't work for myself. I have to do a 40-hour work, regular full time hourly job.
Did you get a job during that time?
Yeah, as a friend has as a dispatcher for a towing company. So it's just through that 8 months. Also, I had to go to psychiatrists because I was also already on heavy antidepressants and I was at risk for suicide. And so, given everything, all these things, the conditions of.
Did you feel like you were battling even, prior to getting busted? Did you feel like you were battling, suicide thoughts even prior to that?
Oh, yeah. Well, most definitely. I was having those regular all the time. My brother, who knew what I was doing, I'd call him all the time and saying, hey, I don't feel good and like this, and try to console me as much as possible. But it still ended up on me. I'd have these big breakdowns where I'm like, I don't know if I can keep going, but what else do I do, Well,
I'm glad you had someone during that time, right? It's, when was it? 3 years ago almost for me is when I went through that stage. And, they talk about people having suicidal thoughts, whatever. And, I'm sure over years, like, feeling this, but never really having. But when you're in that darkness, like it's a completely different state of being. It's like you're almost disassociate from reality, and just the darkness and the weight of those feelings, and then really getting to a place to where you really have convinced yourself that everybody else would be better without you, and all the stories. It is the most dark, painful thing, and I went through that. Over a couple months, but probably really 2 or 3 weeks of just I literally almost killed myself. And the stories and just even thinking back on the energy, and like hours felt like weeks felt like months. I mean, it was such a long, literally scary. And I get why people actually end up turning to it, because it's really hard to pull out of that, out of that space. Right. And again, it's a choice. And it's sad because again, as we kind of continue to talk through this somewhat, when you're in the storm, when you're in the shit, it is very hard to see any positivity. There's no hope. It's hopelessness, right? And here you are, your entire world shuts down, right? Unsustainable anyway. You knew that, but yet nevertheless, it's what your baseline's what you're used to. And then sitting there in the uncertainty, dealing with what's coming, the guilt, the shame, what's everybody think? I mean, just all at once is a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I don't think most people in that space would have been able to get through that. So I want to honor like that you chose just to live and chose to lean in, and just even seeing where you are today and being open to share the story. Cause when I finally went public and talked about being suicidal, I was scared to death to be that vulnerable. And I literally had dozens of men DMing me, sending me messages. You saved my life today. Thanks for being brave. I'm not alone. Because we as men, we tend to not, programming default is to not share feelings. It's not safe, whatever, right? And I've just found like the more open I am, the more talking about the stuff I'm dealing with, all of a sudden it's like, oh, people don't feel alone. And then it creates safety for others to be able to share their experiences, which then in turn has been good for me. It's like, oh, I'm not on this island. Because you probably... For me, when I was in that space, I was like, nobody's going to get it. No one understands. And I completely isolated and pulled away almost from everybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, what was even worse is like, I was out in Florida and I had no family there once they left. And so like the reason why the 8 months was even more like hell to me was, my support group dwindled to nothing. People left me that supposedly were friends. And there was shoestring of anyone. So I didn't have support, and they were far away, my family.
So I'm curious on that, because I had my own experience with that. So friends showing up for you in that moment, you obviously had a lot of people that went away. right? The girl that you were dating, did she stay with you during
Nope.
that? So the minute you
Distance
got,
herself from me.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah, obviously painful from that
Oh, yeah,
perspective,
yeah.
right? And sometimes, again, it also could have been your energy too, right?
Yeah.
And it's especially in a partnership. When I was going through mine, I was in a relationship at the time, and she was a rock and holding, space for me to kind of work through that. But it was so heavy; it became so heavy on her, and it really wasn't hers to hold.
Yeah.
But I was a shell of who I was, and so it's like, yeah. So I get why certain people leave, but then at the same point, it's like I just want someone to show up for me, right? And it
Yeah.
just and I believe like when you really go through the shit, no matter what it is, like you really see who your people are, who your tribe is when you're in when you're at the bottom
Yeah.
versus at the top.
Yeah.
I trust me, I connect with that big time. And even today in the world that I'm in and people that I want in my life, I'm very selective of what that looks like. And yeah, just because of my own experiences, you know.
Well, it's also astonishing where you didn't realize there were some friends that you didn't think were that close. They come out and like don't go the opposite. They come closer.
Yep.
I had friends that helped me out with so many things, and I was like, I didn't even ask for it, and I'm like, that made that small thing made that small difference of there are some people here that care about me, really care about me as an individual, not what I represented, what I used to.
But were you also that guy when you're making the money? You're the one paying for everything. You're the
bet,
guy.
yeah.
AJ's got us.
Yeah.
AJ's got
Left and
us.
right, let's go party. Okay, no
Yeah,
problem.
AJ. And then all of a sudden you don't have money. You're not able to do it. And it's like, oh,
What happened? Yeah.
yeah. It's like,
yeah.
take your energy. Yeah, I connect on that.
Yeah.
Totally. I get that. I was that guy for a long time, right? But most of my giving that way was, again, I love to give and be very generous. I have always been that way, will always be that way. But at the same time, it's like, I believe in any relationship, there needs to be give and take,
Yeah.
right? It's energy. And much of my giving was really tied to my worth, and now it's like, I'm not interested in engaging in relationships where people only value me based off what I give.
Yeah.
Whatever that happens to be, right? So now I connect in that. So 8 months of limbo, right? Sentencing came down, so 3 to 4 years, and then you were sentenced to 2 years, right?
Yeah, 18 months. That's what. And they're like, I had an amazing lawyer that helped me out, and got 18 months, and that was incredible considering they weren't happy. Even the prosecutors weren't happy with what I got. They threatened to, appeal, even because they wanted to ramrod me. Because
So even once the sentencing was issued, does the prosecutor have the option, even if when you're in prison, to be able to like ask for more time for you?
yeah. Well, if there is another case, but once you're basically here, if you're sentenced, you do have an option. They have an option to appeal the sentencing if they want to.
So you said the 8 months leading up to that felt way longer than 16 months in prison.
Because it's just the unknown and dealing with what I used to be and happy with what I, my identity was disappeared, basically. I had to refine or rediscover my new identity in a sense. So coming to terms on what can I do, all this, and it just, disappearing of friends, so to speak, and then, reclaiming who I was as an individual.
So what was that first night in prison like?
It was more, I think I was more in shock still, but I was like, okay, I got a plan. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back and go straight on and like stop this and, be on the straight and then, go legit and have all these grand schemes and things. And it's like, I think it was more naivety that I didn't realize how long the process takes. So there's like, you can't really do much until this segment of my life is going to be over. So
What was the day in prison like? What did that look like?
Typical day, wake up like first thing, they had breakfast at like 5 a.m.
That early?
Yeah, because they also have regular jobs in a way. So it'd be 5 a.m. opens up till like a certain, I can't remember, like 7 a.m. 5 to 7 it's open. I go and have some breakfast, go and run, get ready to do whatever like my job was, or go to the library because you're stuck in these segments and you're only able to travel at 10-minute segments unless they open it up between certain things. But that's really what it is. Otherwise, you're confined in there. So I think if I remember right, every hour at the top of the hour, you can move for 10 minutes in between places.
How much time did you have to spend on a daily basis actually in your cell?
Wow. Good. I mean, from 10 p.m. till 5 a.m., you had to be there unless there was a lockdown. That was just sleeping hours. Yeah, that was the main where you had to stay in it.
Did you have like someone in there in your room with you?
Yeah, so we were three, all bunks, all stacked up all the way to the ceiling, and then a toilet and a little lockers, and then a sink and mirror. But yeah, that's the typical. If no one gets in your unit, gets shut down or anything, that's really the only regulations that, and they do have mandated cleaning during the day as well, etc.
Were some of the other inmates just like, I mean, there are murders in there? I mean,
yeah.
So you were like, what? Like, I know there's with the prison system, right? There's different
levels,
white collar, this or that, but like you're basically a drug dealer, right? So in that, I mean, you just had everyone walks of life, right?
Yeah. So federal prison, mine was a level 1. It goes 2, 3, and then max. So I got pretty decent where I was as a level 1 location. And so my first cell, I had my other 2 cellies. One had been in there for, I think, 25 years. The other one for 30 years. 2 black guys. They've been in there for almost their life. What awakening! Because
you walk in, you're just like,
oh
I'm not in
God.
Kansas anymore.
Yeah,
I'm not in Utah.
Yeah.
I'm not even. Yeah.
It hits you. You're like, whoa. And so,
what was it like? I mean, again, right? You see all these things in the movies and documentaries and so forth. I mean, were there constant fighting? You have to protect the life. Like, do you have to choose
you
sides?
you had to be vigilant at any time. Anything can break out at any time. A fight. We didn't have many fights. I did hear about some, but nothing major.
Did you ever feel like your life was threatened at all at any point in there?
It could be, yeah, but not. I mean, that's the thing is if you're in there, the way you have to always approach it is if someone challenges you, you need to reciprocate it back. Otherwise,
You can't back down.
You can't back down. So I'm very fortunate. I was never challenged, but yes, that was always in the back of my mind. If I'm challenged to any degree, I have to. Otherwise, I'd be considered a bitch or something.
Yeah, and then
you'd be marked that.
and then everybody would come out. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So luckily, and I was, for everyone else, I was one of the shortest terms, considering everyone else that was in there.
Yeah.
So they were like, whatever,
Have you stayed in touch with anybody that?
Yeah,
anyone
a few
that's
of
left?
them. Not a huge amount. We always promise we do stay in touch a little bit, but not then as much.
Yeah.
And we're all in different walks of life too. On that topic, one of my friends, I'd say my best friend, he unfortunately went back in. I got like a notification that he went back in, and I was like, good hell. He had served 6 years, and he got out, and he was one of those.
Got back into it.
I just learned out, like a couple weeks ago.
Just barely.
Because I had corresponded to him after I left. He had a much longer sentence. Still kept up with him. Very intelligent guy, an awesome guy, and I don't know what happened, but I found out he was back into the system again.
So you were sentenced to 18 months, and then you got out at 16 months. How soon before you got out did you know you were leaving early?
So I got out of the actual prison 9 months. In 9 months, so I served in the actual prison 9 months, and then I got about 6 months in a halfway house.
Okay,
that's how it worked. So, and my prison was in Miami, by the zoo, right by the zoo. March 17th is when I got out of that. And then I came here to Salt Lake.
And a halfway house in Salt Lake.
Yeah, just off, I think it was 2100 South or somewhere around there.
Could family visit you while you were there?
Oh, yeah. And then it's finally, because I didn't have my family at all come and visit me at all while I was in Florida. I didn't want them because the amount of visits you can do it's not very much. Unless you happen to get like on a holiday and you can have 2 days in a weekend spur. But I was like, it's not worth it just to come out because once you're in there, you're a different mindset. You kind of block out the entire world. The more you know outside of the world, the harder it is to do your time.
Yeah.
And so I had a great friend, an older friend that I met from the casino. He'd come every week. It was hard not to say don't come, but it was nice. Some people I didn't even know. He's like, I made an impact on him from the casino, and he's like, oh yeah, and so he'd come visit me every weekend, and spend a few hours with me and chit chat and stuff, and so yeah, so it was even that was hard at times where it's like, and that he wasn't family, and I had other people where my other friends that in there where they had family, they spend the entire day there in visiting. They have about, I think, I can't remember exactly the details of the hours, but you could almost spend the entire day there, just in a little area where it had vending machines and stuff like that. But
So when you're in a halfway house, can you work? Can you?
yeah, you have to work because they get a portion of it, basically. You have to work if you want to go outside.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. And so that was super difficult to find a job because not only that,
You're a convict. You're a restaurant.
they have to tell. We have to tell them that, hey, we're gonna have. The halfway house is gonna visit you possibly and ask for like checkups. Are they there, etc. So you have to find an employer that's willing to do all that too, which is very slim. It's like, it's not worth my hassle. Which is kind of understandable.
What'd you end up doing for work?
I was working at this at a pallet place.
Okay.
Yeah, where I started out just sorting pallets, and
So what's going through your mind, right? Making all this money, world ends, starting over, identity, and you're in a halfway house at working pallets, right?
Yeah.
Where's your self-worth confidence at this point?
well, it was like, when I left college, I never finished, and so I was like, you know what, I want to go and finish at least my associates. I'm like, and so that's when I started going, and I'm like, something to work toward. I just wanted to finish the degree, just like, hey, I was like one semester off. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'll go ahead and do that. And so that's what helped me have a, hope for, something to work toward, because there's a lot of things out of my control. I'm like, well, okay, from here, it's like until I get out. So that 6 months while I was in the halfway house, I'm like, they gradually allow you more and more. You end up you can go home for like a short amount of time or during the day. Then you can go for the weekend. And then before you know it, you can spend the whole time there at home. You just have to do call checkups. So gradually, as you get closer to being released, they give you more and more rights, basically. And so that's what was in my control. Is like, okay, I'll start going to school a little bit, try to finish this, and try to get a direction of what I wanted to do because I didn't have any plan, basically.
Yeah.
What could I do? What I did in that past life could be used to be productive in a sense.
So it's been 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. Since. And how soon after you went through everything did you feel comfortable even talking about it?
Maybe 5 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
After I was released from my supervisor release. So I had 3 years supervisor parole. So from the 2015 was when I got released. So 3 years after that, to give the full story to be vulnerable and understand, because it was really hard to talk about it and not break down. About a few years after that.
Okay.
So not that long ago.
Well, what I love when we went to lunch here a few weeks ago, right? And even you talking here, it's like, again, it's been a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like you're not even the same man you were then, right? And it's just like, you're not stuck in it, right? Mm-hmm. We can get stuck in stories and in the past, and I know many people that had really horrific things happen to them years and years ago, and in some form or another still kind of stuck to it, right?
Yeah. And
not having it be part of your identity. And I believe, just on my own journey, the men that I work with, and even hearing you, right? I think, again, they're all, everything's a choice. We have choices that we make, right? I also believe that, I started this podcast at the very beginning. It's like, there's gifts in this. And I think one of the greatest things, having gone through very traumatic or horrific things, is you can become someone to look up to that's just going through the same thing. Maybe the details are different, but you have gone through something very difficult, and you have people that can look at you like, all right, if AJ can do this, I can do this.
Yeah.
Right. And you're able to connect into their pain. So if there was anyone that's like, whatever it happens to be, right, all of a sudden gets put into the correction system, mm-hmm. or has to go through court, all of a sudden, that you can connect in that and you can empathize with them.
Yeah.
And you actually know. You know, I have this whole thing I've been talking a lot about lately is I truly believe the only way you can know something is if you've experienced it, right? Of course, I'm sure you've had many people like, well, I wouldn't have done this and I wouldn't have done that. And I look at my own life, and if I look back, I'm like, well, yes, but there's this ripple effect and so many things happen that all of a sudden you're doing things that you maybe not necessarily would do otherwise, but it's just like, it is what it is. So it unless you've walked in someone's path or actually truly, you don't know. They're just opinions, beliefs.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I honor like you being open and sharing this. You know, what's AJ doing today? What's in AJ's future?
Right now, yeah, so I got into like software engineering. That's the part very analytical. I mean, that's what I grabbed from or gravitated toward from what my past life, and that's why I'm a software engineer now. Really having great time just taking people's issues and where they come up with great ideas, and I'm like, and that's the biggest thing is where I get great gratitude out of is like I can grab someone's idea and from a technical aspect bring it to life. How do you use technology to make your life simpler? With in all these new emerging things, and it's awesome to deal with like AI is coming around, crypto and all this, and dealing with that, and so that tech side, that's where I'm at, and also, as like you had said, I'm in CrossFit still. I coach it on a regular basis, and so I use CrossFit I've been in health all my life in a sense, and my way to give back and be social. In my one part of my life, I'm not super social. I'm on a computer all the time, dealing with the code. And if you've ever sat by me while I'm coding, and I start cussing myself out because I'm going through all these different things, but I'm talking myself out, and there's not a whole lot of social aspect. But I am a very social being too, and so I want to give back by through the health industry and stuff like that. I've gone on a regular basis now. This place in Kauai called Keala Foundation, where they do fundraisers for children at youth for, there's a lot of bad drugs going on in there, epidemic there. And through this fundraising, they offer free CrossFit to kids. So a program to get them out of the streets, so to say. And so I go there yearly and try to give back, donate my time, just serve, and realize how much I get back from just serving people. And so,
dude, I love that. Yeah. So, AJ, if people want to follow you, learn more? I know you're on social. Like, what are your handles on Instagram, Facebook?
It's just AJ Whipple. Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah. yeah. At AJ dots too. I mean, if it's really secular on there, so A.J. Whipple, WHIPPLE.
Yeah, well, and in the show notes we'll put, people want to follow you or like reach out to ask questions, and what I found like is we share our stories, we share, again the trials and tribulations we went through. Like, all it takes is one person. It's like, oh my gosh, AJ knows me and feels alone, and again, if you're going through a hard time, if you're feeling suicide, I mean, whatever you're going through, like life is hard sometimes, and it's like you're not alone, and it's in those moments where you actually don't necessarily feel like reaching out, or more importantly, like feel you're going to be a burden. Like it's just a story. Let it go. Right. Because there are people, there are tribes, there are many people that want to show up for you, and people love to serve and give back. And so one of the greatest ways that you can be uplifted, help through that, is just to share and be open and just trust that, they're going to be there for you. Right. And just like you, like, again, one of the things I say when you're in a really dark season, if you're a parent, like imagine one of your kids are going through that, you would want them to reach out, or you'd want to be able to support them and help them in any way, right? Just like how your family's like, we got you, like, and that's how I felt. Like my family, like, kind of had me. And so, yeah, you're not alone. Reach out. And again, if anything related, especially to suicidal, reach out to AJ, reach out to me. Like, let's talk about that. We both know what that feels like. And trust me, like it's temporary. Everything's temporary. The pain that you're in, the dark season, if you happen to be in one, it's just a season, and it might feel like it's never going to end. Trust me, it will come to an end, and then you'll see this light. Just stay the course, one day at a time. But AJ, thank you so much for sharing your story.
My pleasure.
And and thank you to everybody tuning in for the Burn Up podcast. We'll see you next time.